Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about the ongoing Afghan development, about the future of Afghan peace process, about the new government that should be in place and the other developments. One major development is about the visit of so many foreign ministers of the European Union. We saw that the foreign minister of Netherlands, she was in Pakistan. Earlier to that, the German foreign minister. Now we are also learning that the British German minister as British foreign minister as well as the Italian foreign minister, they'll be visiting soon. So a lot is happening, and now this actually tells us the story that what is the most important part in this whole process and which is the most important country. So now Pakistan has that kind of a leverage, that kind of a weightage, where they can say that now our role is very important to help us out and we'll help you out. Now this is going to be a very interesting transactional kind of an engagement, an arrangement also. So let's see where it leads and how things do settle down in Afghanistan. And to talk about that, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Brigadier retired Tipu Sultan Saab, who is a senior analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you so much for your time, sir. And we'll also be talking to Dr. Akhtar Ali Shah Saab. He's a senior analyst on international affairs. We welcome him in our program, and thank you so much, sir. And we also have with us Dr. Auqaab Malik Saab. Auqaab Malik Saab, an expert on foreign affairs. Pleasant to have you, Auqaab. Thank you so much for your time also. Now, so let's start off from you, sir. Future of Afghanistan. Now, sir, that is the most important story. You pick up any newspaper, you browse any web channel, sir, or perhaps you switch on your television channel and you see they're all talking about the Afghan peace process, the future of Afghanistan. There are certain concerns, but there are certain elements where you can actually see perhaps that it is going to be a very positive development and things will settle down. But still, as the situation seems to be pretty fluid there as well, things will take time to settle down. Let's start off from there. Brigadier, your take up till the current development, sir.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, Faisal, let me first extend my sorrow on the loss of Sayyid Ali Gilani Saab in Kashmir. He was a great leader, a great freedom fighter. At that age, he did not budge. His passing away closes a chapter in Kashmir of a stalwart of freedom. Absolutely. Under duress conditions, and the atrocities that he faced at the hands of that fascist government in New Delhi. He was a great man, and I must extend my sympathies to the family and to the entire fighters who seek freedom from the fascist government in New Delhi. And I think if you seek freedom, you are one man under duress that the world will remember, and thy name is Sayyid Ali Gilani.
Correct, sir.
May Allah give him a great place in Jannah.
Ameen.
You know, coming on to Afghanistan, all wars are fought with some strategic purpose. And if Sun Tzu was right that war is an extension of political policy, I think the NATO and the Americans did not know why were they going into Iraq, why were they going into Afghanistan. And if they had any other objectives other than the enunciated objectives from Washington and London and Paris and Australia and everywhere, we don't know about that. We can speculate. Hamid Gul has enunciated 6 of them. So did our last Defense Secretary, General Lodi and all. But when they say that they went to kill Osama bin Laden, then after 2011, what were they doing over there? I think what they did, what went wrong was that American aura of democracy and humane feelings was missing in all these wars in Middle East and in Afghanistan too. And all these people, the flurry of visits that we are having here in Islamabad, are all those countries, NATO important countries whose foreign ministers are visiting. And Pakistan, what Pakistan's policy was under Imran Khan, under Imran Khan even when he was not in power, has come to fore that in Afghanistan you need to negotiate with Taliban, all the stakeholders over there. I think these visits are very important, and it signifies that whatever Pakistan was saying has proven true. In Afghanistan, compared to the 90s and now that the Taliban are about to form a government over there, there is a difference that they want to engage with the world community. And the world community wants to, move and come and have parleys with Pakistan, Shah Mahmood Qureshi and Imran Khan, the army chief. And Pakistan has become a sort of a doorway or an extension, an approach to the war-torn Afghanistan and the future of Afghanistan and the region and the world peace at large, I must say. I think we can talk and talk of American follies in Afghanistan, and we will not be able to finish in hours and hours. Even they would not know what all they went wrong, and those about $3 trillion.
Still, confusion prevails in the ranks.
The confusion prevails because
White House is saying something, Pentagon is saying something else. The State Department has a different mindset altogether.
When a superpower loses a strategic direction, this is the fallout is like what you are saying amongst the Pentagon and the CIA and the Foreign Office.
And the best part is the way the local news channels, for example, Fox is criticizing Joe Biden. Even certain analysts on CNN, they have been criticizing him that he shouldn't have done that. Then there were a couple of interviews of their senior leadership also, the former senior leadership, I would say.
The reason is that there was so much of media pressure, the print and electronic media against, the way the American army planned their withdrawal.
It wasn't planning, sir. It was just a
central command.
Runaway strategy.
They have a budget of trillions of dollars, and they have an airborne.
And what they did before leaving, I mean, that is another very important factor which we need to discuss also, sir. But I'll go to now Akhtar Saab. Dr. Akhtar Saab, first of all, sir, now there are a couple of very interesting developments. There was a statement by the Taliban, and that was about two very important factors. One, the spokesperson said that China is going to play a very important role in the development of Afghanistan. Sounds good, and Chinese, they have a history that they really undertake huge projects when it comes to the development of any country, and I think Afghanistan is going to be the next place where they'll be doing that, number one. Number two, and that is about another statement of the Afghan spokesperson regarding the Muslims in Kashmir, and he said that if the Muslims are not treated well, we have a right to express our point of view also. Let's start off from there. Dr. Akhtar Saab.
As far as their relations with China is concerned, even before the takeover, diplomatic mission of Taliban met the Chinese, and they assured support to the Taliban, and some understanding had reached between the two powers. One, Taliban assured the Chinese government that their soil would not be used for terrorism against China, and those Chinese who are there would be brought to justice. And then China has its own One Belt, One Road initiative. And China wants to reach to Central Asia and then the whole of Eurasia. So it is not possible without peace in Afghanistan and having diplomatic relations with any government in Afghanistan. So China has a greater stake over in Afghanistan, and similarly, Afghanistan has around 3 trillion of minerals, which China has eyes to exploit. So it would be to the mutual benefit of both the countries. Now, coming to your other point regarding the statement supporting the Kashmir.
Correct.
It was a journal statement, and they all mentioned all the Muslim countries, including Kashmir, that wherever there is a violation of the human rights, they would support the cause of the Muslims. But being now, when you are in a movement, uh, you have a different stance. You have a different approach to things as far international relations is concerned. But when you assume sovereign power, and you are a then member. So far, they are not member of. They have not been recognized by any state. Uh, but once there is a recognition and there is a formal formation of the government, then they have to act as a very responsible government. So, at the same time, while they would be condemning human rights violation in Kashmir, but I don't think that there would be any overt action on their part, because at the same time, they had also met the Indian development in Doha, where there had been certain deliberation between the two powers, where the Taliban has also assured India that their side would not be used against India as far as terrorism is concerned.
All right,
Yes.
coming to you, Dr. Auqaab Malik Saab, another story, and that is pretty interesting as well, because one of the senior members from the European Union, he also mentioned that this is the right time that the European Union should have its own military force. And he said that in the perspective that the way the Americans left Afghanistan in a haste, in a hurry, and we all witnessed what happened, and they haven't even been able to take along so many American nationals. According to the CNN, or according to even the President of the United States of America, around 200 American citizens are left behind, and thousands of that support staff which were engaged with the previous government of Ashraf Ghani, and even prior to that, they have been left behind to suffer. This is what they say, and they believe that the Americans, they always take a unilateral decision and they pull the NATO forces into that kind of a war. Whether you talk about Iraq, you talk about Afghanistan, the recent issue, now they believe that they should have a separate setup. How do you take that particular point into consideration, sir?
Right then. So this is not new. When the Trump administration started he won the elections 2016 and started in 2017. He immediately started talking about, that's Donald Trump, former president, immediately started talking about the need for NATO members other than the United States to take their due share of responsibilities and financial responsibilities, especially because the United States shouldn't be burdening itself completely with all the responsibilities. However, so European nations were already discussing this matter then, when Macron and Merkel were already talking about the need for a European army, just in case NATO couldn't work anymore, primarily because the United States wasn't willing to really take the burden of NATO, which it is doing at the moment. So it's not new. And this is just a regurgitation of the same argument, same discussion that occurred before. However, because it's happening during Biden's period now, I think what happened was that when Joe Biden was elected president, a lot of the European nations calmed down a little bit, thinking now there's going to be a turn of events, there's going to be a change in the atmosphere altogether towards NATO and the European countries. However, this, as you say, unilateral decision to depart from Afghanistan very quickly by Joe Biden for their own global geostrategic rationale, nevertheless, has put them back on the back footing again, the European nations, and they started discussing this issue again. But nothing really came about it last time. It is a pressure tactic for the United States to build pressure upon the United States by the European nations to indicate that they're not very happy with what's happening here, and that it should be a participation of all nations to make a decision that we're engaging in Afghanistan, not the United States alone. As far as NATO is concerned, The likelihood of it disbanding is unclear, yet it's unlikely. The likelihood of European army shouldering the burdens of global institutions and taking charge of its own destiny without the United States is very limited, primarily because now you have a strategic competitor, um, the ex-Soviet Union, the Russian Federation now, and they're much larger and more dominant than the European Union or the European nations can ever be alone. So I think the European parties will essentially have to compromise again to recognize a new strategic environment which is evolving, with Russia and China evolving as the great powers and emerging as great powers to contend for global power. European Union nations especially are not going to be in any way capable of defending themselves just with the European army without United States backing, and that's within NATO. The likelihood of NATO expanding is very high, though, into East Asia, with Japan maybe, South Korea and other countries, Australia and New Zealand. So, look, the dynamic here is a lot of bluster, really, but I don't think it will really pan out in real terms, given the global situation. Afghanistan is a minor point when it comes to the global realities of where the United States stands as far as its global power position is concerned at this moment in time.
Absolutely, I totally agree with you on that part. But sir, there's another very important developing story. Not a developing story, I mean, it was a statement. Now the Americans want that they should work together with the Taliban to eliminate Al-Qaeda, ISIS for that matter. So on one hand, whatever they left behind, you exactly know what they did to it. Whether you talk about helicopters, you yourself, you were in aviation, and you know even a small part, if that is not there, I mean, that machine is useless.
Everything is rotating.
And they have actually destroyed the military aircraft, the helicopters, Black Hawks, and other transport.
Not only that, they destroyed the airport.
Airport also, everything. I mean, they left even their dogs
What
behind.
has got the media center and television
Sir, the radars,
lifts and
the
radars,
ATC, you name it, and they have done it. Now, after doing all that, they expect the Taliban to do whatever they expect them to do. Now, number one, I mean, what sort of a conflict in their own decision making seems to be there, sir? That on one hand, they want to work with them. On the other hand, I mean, this is what they have done. So, what kind of a relationship this is going to be in the future, if there is one?
The Americans have got a serious problem on their relevance about the world. A short while ago, you were talking about the European Union and the Americans. You see, at the end of the World War, America was the only country left with spare money, spare food and weapons and economy running and all that stuff. Whereas Germany was in tatters, so was England, so was France, so was Japan,
correct,
so was Italy, so was Greece. So they led their way into forming a NATO alliance against the Warsaw Pact and all that. And then when the Europeans developed, what the Americans did was that they were dealing with individual countries like Britain and Germany and France, and whatever policy they were towing. The British were helping them across the mainland Europe. Now that the Europeans have made a union, it's a European Union, so the Americans cannot be dealing with each country of Europe individually that they used to. That's a difference. The other thing is that the Europeans do realize that the American power and the American thought process, so to say, the American power has not waned. They still have their boats in the oceans in Atlantic and the Pacific and the Mediterranean and the Gulf.
There is no doubt about their firepower, sir.
The point is that I think over the past few decades, the Americans have lost that kind of leaders like Reagan recently, or Kennedy, or even Clinton. I think if you remember, Bush said at the start of the Gulf War that here is another crusade starting.
The word crusade, I remember.
The crusade he used, and then somebody told him, please don't do that. And
there was a lot of
there's something profound,
criticism on him.
There is something profound at the end of the Pacific War in the mid-40s when they signed a treaty with the Japanese. And they fought against two concepts. One is McCarthyism against the communism that they fought in Vietnam and Korea and Cambodia and all that stuff, and Laos. The other is that I must say, although it is bad, but the truth is that the hatred across the American power corridors against the Muslims came to fore. in destroying Libya, in destroying Syria, in destroying
The Arab
Iraq.
Spring primarily.
You know, it is the hatred against the Muslims and trying to control, trying to get into a new world order, as Rumsfeld had said, and they faltered, and they did not know what strategy to you know. If you do not have a proper strategy as a superpower, you end up what you have at hand in Washington. People are making fun of them. Look at what the Republicans are saying against the Democrats, and what the, you know, you said that even the CNN is holding, public pressure is so much.
So I'll
that
just
they
give you
make-
two examples. Sir, forget about the 13 recent deaths. Forget about the 2,500 American deaths. Forget about the 1,300 NATO deaths. Forget about how many people got killed as civilians or as law enforcement agents in Afghanistan. What I'm saying is, sir, at the end of the day, about 18 US soldiers who have returned back from the war, whether from Iraq or Afghanistan,
they descended.
they commit suicide every day. Just look
And,
at
the number of soldiers that, not only those suicides, but the number of soldiers that they have to throw out who do not agree with their commander that why did you leave Bagram airfield in the middle of the night without blowing a whistle at night, and you know,
And you just
switch off
vanished.
the lights and go there. You see,
Even the local authorities were not informed. Just
no,
imagine.
So the Americans, the Americans have a leadership crisis. They in the contemporary world, they had Kissinger as a driving force in strategy. He's written so many books, and is considered to be one of the top notches. in
Master
strategy.
diplomat.
Master diplomat and all that. But I think he too approved the Middle East wars and Afghanistan and all that. And if you really look at what he says about the Middle East and South Asia, you will see that the result is there with the Americans. I think what the Americans have lost, they not only lost the war. It is very important to consider what I am going to say. The Americans did not only lost a war, they lost an area, a region in a great strategic strength. Why are they running and coming to Pakistan? The Taliban have said that they want to invite the Chinese, and the gateway to Belt and Road Initiative and the CPEC will be through heart of Asia, which is called Afghanistan.
Now,
and
British
they realize that.
British have one important point. I mean, do you think, obviously, one thing is pretty evident, that the role of the Chinese will multiply in Afghanistan, and they believe in development. Unlike
Absolutely.
the American development, they believe in the real development. Number one. Number two, sir, the way the European Union foreign ministers, I told you about the Netherlands foreign
Australia,
minister,
Britain.
Australian, prior to that the German, then the Italian, and they would be all coming. Few have come, few will come in the future. Now, that determines the important role of Pakistan, number one. And that also shows one important factor, that these countries have basically accepted the reality of Taliban.
Indeed.
And they do not want to engage with the Taliban directly. Pakistan would be the gateway. Now,
But the gateway, well, you know, the way they are talking about the women's rights and democracy and all that, this is all hoax. It is the actual thing is that the developed world does not want to leave this region unattended and, you know, let Iraq, let Iran, and let China and let Pakistan do whatever they're doing. I think Pakistan has played very well. Pakistan has sided with the international community all along, and the international community has not dealt with Pakistan fairly in FATF, in other
absolutely.
regions, in their economic policies, in their rhetoric against terrorism, that the bogey that the Indians have been raising and all that. Look at the Indian channels; they are yelling and weeping and all, you know, to no man. You know,
it's a comedy circus, sir, these days.
It's a comedy circus. They are shouting like mad people.
That shows
I
their
mean,
frustration.
Frustration. I think they should realize what fault they have committed into fanning terrorism into Pakistan. And they hurriedly, the middle guy goes in Qatar and meets Sher Stanakzai, who is supposed to be the future foreign minister of Afghanistan.
One of the major spokesperson also.
Was a major spokesperson also.
The tall one.
Tall one. He's been trained in IMA. He's one of the IMA courses, an old soldier. But I think hats off to the wisdom of the Taliban spokespersons, whether it is Suhail, whether it is Zabiullah Mujahid, whether it is Stanakzai, Mullah brother himself, or Habatullah Khunzada. or the Haqqanis. I've always said in your program that the Taliban are going to survive the political and military power, and the Americans one day will have to go, and it will be a greater repeat.
And these were the same Haqqanis the Americans were asking us to go
Haqqani
after.
network.
Haqqani network and do more. Remember, I think there was a very interesting, being on this Facebook, and it said that is it enough or should we still do more?
I think the days of these great warriors that the Americans called and the Republican Party in the olden days when 9/11 had not happened, which I don't know who did 9/11 and why did they do it and why did they destabilize the world.
Sir, this
and
is
kill the
another
millions of
great
people.
story, just like
It's a
Kennedy's killing,
it's a
that you
big
can only
question.
pick up the story in 2038.
2030.
But the point is
And
now
it
when you
did.
talk about 9/11, sir, people would know the reality. What was the larger picture behind this whole...
And look at the American wisdom. When these very people, the turban, Taliban or Mujahideen, Afghan is an Afghan, Pashtun is a Pashtun. He looks alike whether he is a Mujahid under Hakim.
Or even a normal local person.
Under
This
Gulbuddin
is-
Hikmat Yar or Abdul Rasul Sayaf or Haqqani or Mullah Umar. They went to Washington and said, the American president said, oh, you are great warriors and you are fighting an evil empire and all that.
The meeting with Ronald Reagan?
Ronald Reagan. Lo and behold, after about 2 odd decades, they became their sworn enemies. And they, Bush said that
They were the brothers from another mother.
Oh, have
That's
you
what they used
seen
to
that
do.
video
Yes, sir, I
in which
remember.
Tony Blair and everything, Taliban has finished and we have brought freedom to Afghanistan and the American army, what they did in Afghanistan as against General MacArthur in Japan, struck difference. MacArthur, when he was leaving Japan, the entire Japanese nation was weeping that he should not leave. When the Americans, General Mackenzie's Central Command was leaving Afghanistan, everybody was hating them. And the Taliban were firing in the air and bowing before Allah.
Yeah.
Thank
Did you
God.
see that?
and even that
They were
thank
crying
God,
when they were praying, yes.
A great shaitan has left. The Americans told their soldiers, the raw who had not killed anybody, to kill innocent people, to break their shy of killing people. That is.
I mean,
what
that
they
is
have
very
been doing.
true. Sir, now, if
they have been bombing marriage parties. They have been killing the villagers that you are Taliban sympathizer. Instead of giving them money to educate, to eat food, to making roads, to hospitals and all this.
Sir, just imagine they did not do anything in 20 years. And 20 years is a lot of time, sir, when that kind of money is pouring in. And still 43% of the GDP of Afghanistan depends on the foreign aid. You can well imagine they don't have any economy to survive.
I think in America somebody should hold the American administration responsible of what they have done, what crimes they have committed.
Sir,
the Americans
you mark my
themselves,
words, sir, in the US midterm election, we'll see this result.
For American survival, I think the law must be promulgated. And the courts must press against these people who have committed so much atrocities over the last 3 decades.
All right. Now, coming to you again, Dr. Akhtar Saab, a couple of important points. I mean, since we were talking about the foreign aid. Now, the real challenge, forget about the legitimacy of the Taliban according to the Western media, that they should look after the women's rights, their schooling, their other issues, and they should have a proper setup. And obviously, now we know the Taliban have changed. I mean, they are the Taliban of this year, and they are very different. My point is, sir, about the Afghan financial problems that will be there. They are there because, at the end of the day, you need assistance. If half of your GDP depends on the foreign aid, then you really need to think hard that your money, around $9.5 billion, that's been frozen. No more aid coming in, though they say they will. But for how long? God knows. But there comes in countries like China and Russia with the largest forex reserves and a lot of interest. Do you think the Americans or their certain ideology is going to get replaced soon by the philosophy of the Chinese and the Russians, especially in Asia? And Afghanistan is going to be the first and foremost example.
At the moment, Afghanistan is facing economic crisis. This is one of the biggest challenges the Taliban are now facing. the general public, there is an uncertain situation. They are confined there to their houses. The business has suspended, and there's no employment. Even daily wage earners, they have their woes, and they are bewildered what to do. So, as far as if the Taliban can exist as far as a primitive tribal society is concerned in such a formation, but if they have to follow the international standards, the socio-economic indicators, and the sustainable goals, then mere dependence on China or Russia is not enough. Even if you take Pakistan, even Pakistan can't do without IMF and European Union. You have to develop some international trade in order to achieve your goals and to develop your budget and to fill the gaps as far as the deficit financing is concerned. So without, it now depends on the behavior of the Taliban. They had inked Doha Agreement. Doha Agreement had one of the most important points, that was intra-Afghan dialogue. Although they have assumed the political power in Kabul, they have the de facto authority, but still Doha Agreement is the yardstick for international community. They have to show, they have to demonstrate that they adhere to the agreement which they had signed before the international community, and they have to include the other public opinion leaders of Afghanistan in order to solicit the support of the international community and attract foreign aid. You see their whole finances are being freezed in the banks of the United States and other banks. So they have to
Even
be...
IMF was supposed to give the Afghan government $400 million. They did not.
Yes, but they are now under a watch. Whatever, there were certain, you see, overt agreements. There were certain understandings which were behind the channel, which were not overt, which were not. There were certain annexures as well when the Doha Agreement was signed. So the whole of the European Union, even the Central Asian countries, and the United States would be watching them, how far they are adhering to the understandings which were made between United States and the European Union. So it's up to the ball is in the Taliban's court, how far they behave as far as the commitments which they have made, whether through the...
So as you rightly pointed out, they are under observation. They will remain under observation. And since everybody is talking about what exactly do they do, we'll determine later on that what exactly is going to happen in Afghanistan. Thank you, sir, for your comment. But now, since we are running out of time, a quick comment from you, Dr. Auqaab Malik, and that is about the future of FATF and Pakistan. We all know that as far as compliance is concerned, there could be nothing more than that, to be very honest. Still, that sword is hanging on a neck. My point is, sir, since you have seen so many foreign ministers coming in, so many foreign ministers will visit, do you think right time for us to actually negotiate with them? That if you want us to help you, you help us in the international arena as well. And lift off this FATF, put us back in the white list. What nonsense is going on?
I think this needs to be carefully managed. Yes, one of the first things that came to my mind when I realized lots of different foreign ministers and leaders from different countries were visiting Pakistan is that Pakistan can utilize this position now as a credible country which requires a quid pro quo action. In fact, well, if they're going to give something, they're going to get something back. I think that's the norm in international relations everywhere. So this is a bargaining process. It's always been a bargaining process. And Pakistan can utilize its position now to make sure that the international community softens its position on Pakistan as far as the grey list is concerned, and FATF, Financial Action Task Force. There's no doubt about the fact that it needs to bargain correctly in this respect. It's got a very solid hand here. And this moment in time, it's an opportunity. And these opportunities will disappear again as the world takes its attention to.
Exactly. This is the right time. I totally agree. Auqaab Malik? I think we just lost the connection. But sir, this is very important that I believe that, as Dr. Saab just mentioned, that we should not lose this opportunity. And this opportunity is never going to come again. We need to make sure that all our demands, the legitimate demands, should be met.
I think after a year,
if they want us to do something, they should do something in return as well.
I think Pakistan should come to forcefully, diplomatically, and tell them that this is what you have been doing to us. It's very unfair. It's high time you do that. In diplomacy and power, there is always a opportune moment.
Always.
And there is an opportune moment. And Pakistan should not miss so many things, regionally, globally. And I think America still is an important country. Europe is very important.
Has its own
so is
importance.
China, so is Russia, and Pakistan.
But I think the Indians really have to learn from this.
I think one thing I must tell you that having said that, everybody is important in the world. But right now, the region is much more important to Pakistan as compared to the rest of the world, which is going to fall in place and which will be told to us. I think Pakistan should not commit a cardinal mistake of being misguided by the people who do not have that much of economic stake vis-a-vis China, Russia, and the Central Asian states.
All right.
That's very important.
That's very important, sir. I totally agree with you. Anyway, Brigadier Sahab, thank you so much. Dr. Auqaab and Dr. Akhtar, it was a pleasure having you both in the show as well, sir. And that's all we have for this, sir. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.